5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning or good afternoon if you're listening in the afternoon. I've been counting down for one specific reason. Today's episode is going to be actually a very special episode. And I would say probably one of the most exciting ones, at least for me, hopefully for you as well, because we're going to talk about space. We're going to go into space together with the right person for the job. My friend Anil, somebody that I actually had the opportunity to meet last week when I was at a conference in Slovenia, a brilliant conference, one of my favorite business events called Podim. And I was moderating one of the stages. Anil was one of the keynote speakers that I had to introduce, and his presentation was so engaging, so eye-opening that I had no chance but to invite him to be with us and to share some of these fantastic kind of horizon expanding insights, I would say. And I know many of the listeners here are entrepreneurs or founders, business leaders interested in those kind of topics like innovation. No matter if you are in space economy, I do believe this is going to be an important episode for you because um, it can really spark a lot of ideas about how you can innovate better, and hopefully some of you can actually get into the space of space, if we can say that, Daniel. But Daniel, good morning. I hope you're enjoying your cup of coffee
Good
already.
morning. Good morning. Good morning. Thanks a lot for the introduction. Well, was maybe, now you are raising the bar for the expectations, but
No pressure.
thanks a lot for introduction and thanks a lot for inviting me. So, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are in the world.
It's a great pleasure having you, and I want to just go into it right from the start. Last week, you led us through the different stages of space development, so to say, when it comes to space economy, from space 1.0 to space 5.0. So, could you briefly give us an idea about those type of stages?
Okay. Thanks a lot for the question. Well, it is not something formalized, but we in the space sector try to define some era, some ages of space evolution. Relatively, we are very young in space because if you consider the time from when the first sketching from Leonardo of the flying object and the first airplane, no, the Wright brothers when they made it, no, and the first flight through the ocean. If you consider that time frame, and from the time of this Wright brothers flight and the man on the moon, you see that the time is really shrinking, and the technology acceleration is taking the man, on the moon, and maybe in the next very few years, even beyond that. So we consider this, this evolution step in as you mentioned in 4 or 5 different ages on space. For instance, the space 1.0 1.0 was basically the astronomical observation of sky, and looking at the stars and scientific and astronomy and physics and so on. Then we entered in a space 2.0 2.0, that was the race to space. So we all, have heard about and then read about United States, the former Soviet Union, and so on, the race to space and the man on the moon, and so on. Then we entered in a completely new era, that was the space 3.0, that was the international collaboration for scientific purposes. So the International Space Station, the ISS, that is the largest and the most complicated outpost that the man has in space, and is a gigantic, so imagine a huge laboratory used for scientific research. But then something interesting came up, because using this big international, truly international lab on space, imagine something that is flying at 27,000 kilometers per hour speed at a 400 kilometers orbit on from Earth. So having this lab, incredible lab available, was something like, hey, I can test maybe new technologies. I can use these conditions, particular conditions, to develop new innovations. To do what? To bring those innovations to Earth. So taking technologies from space to Earth. And I'm pretty sure that all the audience here, all the friends listening to your podcast, I'm pretty sure that they have used at least one space technology today in their daily life. Maybe the mattress foam when they woke up. Maybe they use some energy efficiency tools or energy efficiency systems, taking the stairs to go somewhere. Maybe they have cooked in some, material that is thermal resistance. Maybe they have made some other, baby formula. If someone has kids, is a derivation, is coming from space technology, as well as the HACCP food method, and so on. So space is almost everywhere. And this was the space 3.0, but now we are fully fledged and fully running in the space 4.0. 4.0, why? Because we had the since some years now, private. So we have the commercial, we have the business. So those new buzzwords, those new keywords from new entrepreneurs, what they call let's say the new space. So the space economy. So people, billionaires, we all know the story of Elon Musk, but we have many, many more that are entering and looking at space as a new commercial and business opportunities. Space tourism, space outpost, new space stations, commercial services, deploying cargo services to the ISS, and so on. But the most interesting part for me, and this is also what we discussed last week, and by the way, thanks for sharing, because it was an incredible event, and you moderated very well. But the most interesting part is what is expecting us now is the space 5.0, is the integration of space and earth-based technologies, is the access to space from technologies and know-how and competencies that are not coming from space. But space is in need of that. I just give you some very, very brief example. In space, there is this need of digital twinning concept, because the space is changing, is now becoming fast and accelerated even more than the period from the Wright brothers and the man on the moon, because the competition now is there, because we have an increase of 500% in number of countries that in 50 years are now accesses to space, or accesses to space data, or accesses to space technology. This means that the competition is not among the 5-6 countries that started launching probes in space in the 60s, but is almost around 100 plus countries in the world. So we need now to have technologies, we need now to create innovations that are cross matching and somehow cross contaminated. And last but not least, let me just tell you this: Space 5.0 is also a new approach, is a way to see space technology for the benefit of Earth and for the benefit of the human being, and not only for the great endeavor that is the exploration of the universe, uh, but also, to see how to save our planet, how to maybe find resources to save, find resources somewhere to save again the planet, or to be more conscious and more sustainable in a way, also from the technology point of view. So yeah, this was more or less the timeline for space. But what I would love you guys to convince is that as 45 years ago, it was the first franchise of Star Wars. No, you see the guy here in the back. I'm a big fan of them. And they were saying that no, Master Yoda was saying that the Force is everywhere. Well, I want you to understand, and I would love to demonstrate that space technology or space data is everywhere. And even if we don't know, but we are using a lot of this space data and space technology in all our daily life. So why not use it also to save our planet, to save ourselves, and of course, to be more conscious and more sustainable.
Thank you for this thorough introduction on
It was a bit
space
longer.
economy, and I just sense so much passion in your voice, and I'm wondering
Yeah.
if you can give us a bit of a context very shortly, and then we'll continue with all these interesting topics. Where did this passion come from? And just just for the context, what are the kind of cool projects you're part of today?
Um, well, I'm coming from, let's say that the journey was quite interesting, was quite different or peculiar, because I'm coming from non-space. So I spent my first 15 years of career working on technology transfer, innovation, and I was the middleman or the middle organization exactly between research entities, universities, and entrepreneurs and enterprises. I have worked a lot for more than 10 years on European Commission funded, co-funded projects, being exactly as I was saying now in the middle. So the good point was that hey, I had plenty of different, non-space sectors experience. So I worked in FMCG, I worked in IT, in ICT sector, in white good industry, and so on. The bad part of the story was that I was not able to answer the question that what is your job? No, even when someone was asking that, hey, what you are doing? It's quite difficult. And the other bad part of the story was that I was like a frog. I was not a land animal, and I was not a fish. So I was exactly in the middle. But the good part of the story is that at a certain point, and I moved from private to public to ministerial, so working also on innovation policies. At a certain point, that was a call, and the Italian Space Agency was searching for someone to start from scratch the technology transfer department, and I was lucky enough, let's say, to apply and to be selected. And I was also lucky or unlucky enough to be challenged by this completely new task that was okay, start from very scratch this brand new department. And then what I did, um, I passed them. I just put in that box all the expertise I had in known space, and this was maybe the key point. So connecting different worlds, connecting space technology and space data, but knowing the known space applications that were in need of that. And then I continued working on supporting the creation of new companies having this concept, and then startups, and then incubators, and then risk finance, and so on. um, i I must admit that at that time that was the sexiest job I ever had, and it's still the sexiest job I always tell around. Now I am more in the private sector, and I'm focused on supporting research organization in being let's say specialized, so in having some space connection, as well as working with public entities around Europe and around the world on innovation, designing innovation policies on space economy. And very soon, very soon, so I cannot still disclose, but very soon I will start also jumping in the risk finance part of space economy. I must admit, and this is a confession I'm doing to you and to your audience, that I was one of the very few kids that was not dreaming of becoming an astronaut, but my dream was becoming a pilot. So yeah, maybe on a lower
Pretty
level
close.
than an
Pretty close.
astronaut, but yeah, okay, at least the thing for the young guys, for the young people, is always because I'm a practical example. I was not dreaming of becoming an astronaut, but becoming a pilot. But what I always tell young people is that uh, dream at the moon. If it is going wrong, anyway, you have reached the star. So it's but I was not yes, I was not meaning to become an
But
astronaut, but a pilot.
but I gotta say, it's really, uh, as you said, I'm a head of innovation in a space agency. What do you
Oh
do?
well.
Right? It's definitely it's definitely a good icebreaker, so to say,
Yes,
to
yes,
start
yes,
with.
yes.
And I was preparing for this episode, and I read some statistics, some data based on the presentations that you guys gave, and
Okay.
it's kind of fascinating to see that currently the space industry is estimated to be over $340 billion and expected to grow to more than $1 trillion in the next few decades.
Yeah.
So quite interesting. I'm not sure many people know about all these things. So I want to just explore and maybe if we can present some of the opportunities to people here, starting with maybe the one that we hear on the news a lot about, which is the space tourism and the work of your good friends Bezos, Elon, and Branson.
Elon,
Yes,
my neighborhood.
Richard,
Yeah,
Elon,
Richard,
and
Elon,
Jeff.
and Jeff.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah,
yeah.
it's my
It's
my
okay.
neighborhood. And by the way, I was wondering if we can maybe end up this conversation a bit earlier than expected because I have a barbecue with them here in my backyard, so I need to go and
Jeff
organize.
is very impatient. I know.
Yes, yes, and he's very timely. He wants his tech ready at the right time, and yeah. So anyway, apart from that, but anyway, if Jeff, Elon, and Richard and so on, if they are here, if you want to join, and even if your audience, some of your audience want to join in my backyard for the barbecue, the invitation is always open because I'm pretty sure you are all very cool guys. Um, well, you asked about the opportunities. Yes, you are right. The figures are maybe overestimated because by 2040 there is one estimation of space economy generating $1 trillion of revenues. Um, Maybe they are estimated. We need to keep somehow, feet on earth, because although we are talking about space, but consider that the newcomers, this space 4.0, as we said, so the billionaires, all those friends in my backyard, they are billionaires. No, so there are people who are very, very wealthy. They have money. They can invest a lot, and yes, they look at business. They look at commercial, but they can afford it. So if you look at maybe the preliminary figures of Virgin Galactic, of Blue Origin, and so on space tourism, okay, you see that maybe reaching the break even is, talking about startups because they were a startup at a certain point of their life. So talking about the break even was not a simple story because yes, you can pay in a range of 300 $450,000 for a suborbital flight. Yeah, but you need to Virgin says that they have a very long waiting list, correct? But the problem is that they don't have the spaceship to carry these people there. And building a spaceship is not something that you do in a couple of days. And as well as you need to create the infrastructure, you need some spaceports, you need some to create also other ways of revenue streams. You need to create. So it's not an easy business. It's even tough than that, even tougher. Maybe working with the space agencies like SpaceX is doing, like Boeing. If you see the Starliner project, they started at the same level, SpaceX and Starliner, and but they're still lagging behind. They already have done their second test to ISS, while SpaceX is already, on a regular basis. But you will never see the right figures of how much money SpaceX has invested so far and what is their break-even expected. So, in my opinion, if a new entrepreneur or if a non-space sector entrepreneur wants to enter space, they can enter in a smooth way, like using some space technologies, or even better, using some space data or some space infrastructure already there, or space-related services to develop new innovations and new product. Allow me maybe to give you a couple of examples, like because I can prepare for that. Like for instance, I don't know if you can see this. Okay, I was not supposed to show you the name of the company, but this is This is a lens, and those lenses are coming from the helmet of the astronauts. I don't know if you can see, and those are used are here are just used as magnifiers for the mobile phone camera, and they are used and they're sold at a very reasonable low cost price, and they're used for detecting maybe dermatitis or other things using your web. But this is coming from a space technology, and who developed this was a company that was completely out of the space domain. Or otherwise there is this fashion company, I don't know if you can see this. They
Mhm.
developed this with a product, a material that has some space connection, and this is foldable. You can do this glasses
Just
like
for
this.
those of you who are listening and you don't see the visual, these
Oh, sorry
sunglasses
for that.
that are foldable.
Sorry.
No, no, don't worry about that. These sunglasses that are
Sorry.
foldable, which are also coming from the sector that the new is talking about. But yeah, go ahead.
Right. Or companies working now cross matchmaking, companies working with products like small, this is a small, I cannot disclose that much, but this is a small coffee machine embedded. So coming from space, you can maybe press some hot water here, and just with the drop properties, the water is coming out and it's coffee. Mm. And this is completely okay. I can understand this is completely different from my coffee that I have done to be prepared with this thing. It's different, but there is an innovation. Or the last but not least, this is a company that started from space food. This is a Silicon Valley based company, and they developed this product that is now a nutrition bar, a novel food, a functional food. So just to give you this, a very brief example and short examples, to enter the new space economy opportunities, you don't need to have a rocket scientist, or you don't need to have that kind of technologies in house. Space technology and space data are very much available. Also because okay, I don't want to show my, because otherwise I'm always showing my things. Show your mobile, Stoyan, the mobile you have. Okay, okay. That mobile has the same computation power to handle. In your hand, you have the computation power to handle 100,000 Apollo missions. So try to imagine what you can do with that power in your hand. At the same time, trying to imagine what you can do with a very accurate positioning system. Now, I don't want to go that much into details because otherwise it will be, a lecture on space technology, and this is just a talk among friends. But all the positioning system, all the activities, all the features are done not by the satellite, but by your mobile phone. The satellites somehow, the positioning system satellites are somehow, allow me to say that, stupid. So they are sending a message. And we all studied in geometry and in mathematics that to have one unique position in space, you need how many coordinates? Three, right? In a 3D space, you need the three coordinates for a unique position. Try to imagine if you have these three data from satellite with a fourth variable, fourth one, that is time. So you need to elaborate all this data, and you have the right position time by time. But who is doing this elaboration? Is your mobile phone. It's not the satellite. The satellite is just giving you the position. You have a receiver in the mobile phone, and the mobile is detecting, where you are. So try to imagine if you have all this power in your mobile phone. Sorry, if you have all this power, you have all the data with you, and you can do plenty of things, and you don't need to understand how the positioning satellite is working. You don't need to understand that. You just need to understand that you have this information with you, and then you can do whatever you want with that. So you are right, 1 trillion by 2040, but that 1 trillion is not all because the new Jeff, Elon, and Richard will come up. I'm pretty sure that there is plenty of space also for the new Anil, Stoyan, and so on.
That sounds like a quote I would put on my wall. So thank you for that. But I think it's such a good insight, because the the normal human being like myself, the initial thing that you think is, rockets, launching missions to Mars, and those kind of things that we see on the news. But actually, um, it's a lot more practical from entrepreneurship standpoint of what we can potentially do to create value for this growing industry, but also the other way around. What can we get inspired from space that can be applied into our day to day kind of both? And I just want to explore with you some other maybe opportunities, hard opportunities out there at the moment, which entrepreneurs can get excited about finding solutions of. And I'm just going to read a couple, but I'm sure you can go deeper in many of them. Um, and this is a topic, by the way, I just really want to dig into and hear your perspective. But one of them is the satellites, and okay, let's start from there. Then we'll go into the other opportunities. But I'm super curious and interested with all the satellites that are right now in the orbit, and many of them. I think I listened to a podcast. They called it. It's kind of like the wild west,
Yeah.
with the satellites regulation and the whole. I'm not sure people know how many satellites are right now just circling around, and they're actually not functioning, but kind of
Uh,
like a in a trash.
oh yeah. So you're talking about the debris.
Mhm.
So yes, debris is problem because we know that there are tens of thousands of debris, but those are only the debris that we can detect. So this means a radium of around of some centimeter, tens of centimeter. So try to imagine an object that is something like, yeah, like this thing. Hmm? But try to imagine all the non-detectable debris. So in that case, there is an estimation of having at least 100,000 of pieces or even more. And so imagine the same data, the same information I gave you about the ISS. So imagine an even small piece at a speed of hitting you at a speed of 27,000 kilometers per hour, and the damages that they can make. Uh, Maybe some of you have seen the movie Gravity, and everything started from that. It was just a very small debris, and just to give you an example, is something that is 10 times faster and 100 times smaller than a bullet. So the damage is even more than that. So yeah, debris are a problem. We are now we might face in the near future the Kessler paradox, which is not the Kessler root of the Millennium Falcon, as we were mentioning Star Wars earlier, but the Kessler paradox is that we are not able to send probes or to send satellites in space because the probability of collision with something that is already there is too high. So this is sort of paradox. No? We cannot send something because it's already crowded there, and yeah, and it's quite crowded, already crowded out there because we have all these probes, satellites, and of course this debris. Now you were asking on about how many satellites, if there is a sort of census, a survey on what we have there. Um, the straight answer is no. Why? Because yes, there is a United Nations Outer Space office based in Vienna, but it's not compulsory. So if you are sending something to space, it's not compulsory that you sign the register, say what you are sending to space and where are you sending, in which orbit, and so on. Of course, it's your interest knowing if in that orbit there is already something else, if there is a risk of collision, and and all these things. But you don't have this kind of obligations. The second aspect is that you have to consider that space is wild west, as you mentioned very correctly, because this was also a quote from NASA and an American, a US Air Force general. um, Being a wild west means that you have civil and defense use satellites or probes or whatever. And also for this, for obvious reason, you don't have a register, no? Where you have all the the satellites and so on. So it's very difficult knowing in a very precise way what it's out there. Then you have the problem of the outdated debris, the outdated satellites. That is another big problem, because it's definitely less expensive. So the cheapest way of let's say decommissioning, let's say, a satellite at the end of the life, it's not bringing back down to earth and waiting that it's the disintegrating and in the atmosphere and so on. The cheapest way, the less expensive way, is keeping that junk in that orbit and leave it there. So we already experienced in the last couple of years emergencies because of maybe end of life satellites from some countries that did not gave a lot of information of what was that satellite for up there, and they started deorbiting. They started coming down, and they discovered this in a very incidental way, because someone saw that their own satellite that was live and living and working was hit by something, and they slightly change the orbit. So they look around and see, hey, what hit me? Oh, it was this. But where is this coming from? Hey, but this, and then all the problem. And then you have another big problem is that once you have this lot of deorbiting objects, yeah, if they are not disintegrating in the atmosphere, they are definitely, because of gravity, they are definitely falling on Earth, and you don't know where, because you don't have maybe the right data. So yeah, it's a bit crazy out there. I should say it's a bit messy. And if you consider that it will become even worse, because, for instance, we all talk about Starlink, no? So the satellite constellation of SpaceX, linked to SpaceX. But if we consider Starlink, other constellations like OneWeb, new constellations for telecommunication, also from other countries who want their own constellation. So try to consider that we are expecting more than 60,000 new probes, new satellites, new objects in space in the next 3 to 4 years. And that's a number that is not sustainable. So it's very difficult. At the beginning of the talk, of the conversation, I mentioned looking at space to being more sustainable on Earth. Here the problem is that before colonizing space or the moon, we are now filling out of the atmosphere with junk, and we are now polluting space because we don't have room to pollute Earth. So it's a bit philosophical, but yeah, it's an issue that we have to consider in the future.
Yeah, it really reminds me of all these movies about Wild West. Kinda, you go to this new land, and there is no law, there's no regulations, and everybody's kind
Yes.
of trying to figure it out. And there's these gold rushes, and but I'm wondering, are companies, is that one of the areas that is a space for looking for solutions? Are companies and governments trying to find solutions, and is that an opportunity for startups to look into as well? How do we clean and create it more sustainable when it comes to these satellites?
Um, well, the answer A would be the politically correct one. So it's like, hey, everybody, we should shake hands, we should do things together. public and private, because space is not mine, yours, or third countries, is all of us, no, that are responsible for space. And we should do this. Okay, let's put our effort together and work on that. And okay, let's plan something, and let's see where this will be possible. And okay, but the correct answer is answer B, the unpolitically correct. That is, if there is no a specific obligation, nobody will do that. The specific obligation is that you design a law, okay, but at that time you need to have a body that is that has the mandate to to organize and to have all this compulsory. But we are not in that situation. I described about the United Nations outer space affairs. UNOSA, it's the name of the office, but that should be compulsory. It is not the case. Then we should have maybe a real and urgent need, like the Kessler paradox. I cannot send something in space, so my business will be affected because I risk to have damages and a risk to have collision with something already there. So there is a very urgent need to clean up also the space. Third, so far there is no a real and solid business opportunity on that. I'm sorry to say that, but there is no business opportunity. Why? Because deorbiting has a cost. So if you consider the lifetime of a satellite, I'm telling you this a very in a very brick and mortar way. So it's like you have 10 years. So the first 3 to 4 months is just reaching the satellite, starting the orbit, starting the operations, and then you start working. So your real work is not 10 years, but it's 9 years and a half, let's say. Okay, and then you take money for those 9 years and a half. If you have to consider also the deorbiting part, this means that you have to consider other take away other 3 4 months, because you have to end operations, you have to start the deorbiting operations, then you have to consider some propellant, some fuel to start again, the rockets, and then deorbit, change the orbit. And then the orbit is not like, I'm just make a U-turn when I'm driving the car and then I'm going back. No, you have to, change the orbit in a gradual way, and so on. And this is costing. And this means that from the engineering point of view, you have to consider also this part. And this means that you are taking away again other 3 4 months of activity, of revenues. This means that 10 years mission, you are taking away 1 year because of operations. And then you have your business plan based on 9 years of revenues. So from the business point of view, it's not that much attractive. Mm. So uh, yeah, and the other aspect is that if you are increasing the engineering cost, if you're increasing the engineering activities, then you're increasing the weight, you are increasing the volume, and sending something to space is still costly, and is going by volume and by weight. And so if you make all these countings from the business point of view, it's not that. It will become more a philanthropic project, deorbiting a satellite, rather than a business viable. So I'm sorry to give you the answer B, which is not politically correct, but so far this is the fact. I hope we are not waiting for an asteroid or satellite or something crashing on Earth, and so we are not remembering Armageddon moving with Bruce Willis and so on, to need to decide that we need to deorbit whatever is coming at the end of life in orbit. But yeah, unfortunately, life and humanity goes like this. So we are, in most of the cases, we are very good in the finding solution when the problem occurs, rather than anticipating the problem in having a solution in hand. But this is how life goes.
That's correct, and hopefully with the development of all this, the regulations, legislation will somehow bind the people's or the organizations sending satellites to have some sort of responsibility, and there will be some innovative solutions that need to be developed internally, either by
Yeah.
governments or by the businesses and organizations sending these satellites to actually do their own cleaning, so to say. But I want to talk about another topic, which it actually comes from a quote by one of your barbecue buddies, Jeff Bezos. He mentioned in an interview, we need to take all heavy industry into space and preserve Earth. That's one of his aspirations. For him, it's like, and I want you to comment on that. What do you think about that? And when it comes to um, how far is this in the future? Are we leaning in this direction? And generally, what is your take on this? What is your opinion?
Um, well, when he says heavy industries, he says industry that are heavily linked also to resources. So the natural resources or the resources we use, or energy and so on. Since some years, because of the new stations in orbit, or because of the new idea of having a permanent outpost on the moon and so on. So we are talking about the acronym is ISRU, that is in situ resource utilization. So is okay, let's see how we can use resources, and we don't have to bring those resources from Earth to build the new outpost, or colonies or whatever on the moon, and then maybe later on Mars. Why? Not only because we are conscious and responsible, but also because, as I told you before, volume and weight and sending something is very, very expensive. Okay, but taking resources from another planet or from an asteroid, so the space mining concept definitely can help, not only in using those resources for that specific purpose, but also maybe on using those resources to reduce the consumption of the earth we are currently undergoing. So having maybe rare earth materials coming from an asteroid, that is plenty of that, or to produce and manufacture maybe new products that are like the semiconductors, microelectronic components, and so on, or having maybe new ways of energy generation, energy power that is not consuming maybe land or consuming other areas, because yes, photovoltaic and solar power is good, is incredible, maybe efficient now, but you need space, you need surface to have all this. And the paradox is that in some cases, if you make photovoltaic panel large, photovoltaic farms, as they call it, you build them in large areas, so in large fields, and then you cover the earth. But apart from that, those resources we need to find out somewhere. And the world population is growing at a pace that was not expected. So it's good, of course, but it's consuming resources. There was some statistic also from the WHO and from the FAO that by 2040 or 2050, in some countries, there will be a deficit. There will be a problem of a hunger problem, because they will not be able to produce enough resources to feed the population. So when Jeff is mentioning the resources, so he's pointing out at natural resources as a way of generating energy from somewhere else, as a way of finding new material, new minerals, new, as I said, ISRU that we can maybe bring on Earth. Now, if you tell this, or if you at an interview, or during a barbecue with a beer in your hand, yeah, okay, it's a nice idea, interesting, yes. But when you come again to the figures, to the numbers, it's not an easy task. I have been the pleasure to be a mentor of a competition from a big aerospace company. And the competition was, so I was mentoring the teams, and the competition was, okay, find a way to create a deep space farm to get solar energy and beam down this energy on Earth to power the hydrogen production. No? You know, yes, many ideas, interesting, and so on. But when we were just digging or deep diving on the technicalities, on what kind of technologies we were in need of, there were a lot of question mark. There were a lot of blank paper, a lot of black boxes. That yes, but we don't know how to beam the technology, the power in efficient way. Yes, but we need the solar solar panels in deep space, but then how it will cost going there. I remember that one of the team was just making some accounting, some numbers, and they said, okay, we can build a startup based on this idea, but just to start, just to have a small, very small proof of concept, we need $50 million. So it's not that that easy, but undoubtedly this is the challenge. So getting resources from somewhere uh, to have a more sustainable way of living on Earth, because Earth, yes, is the only starship we have, but Earth is also not with infinite resources. So definitely the regeneration of resources is not at the same velocity, at the same pace of the consumption we are doing. Just consider the rare earth, no, the example I gave you before. It will come a time where the rare earth will not be there, and either we drill down very down and we start consuming a lot of the resources, or otherwise we will be without that. The same aspect maybe is the same shortage in some years will come out from the lithium. So we don't have, and the estimations are that we will not have in 20-30 years, if the electric vehicles are going at this speed, we might not have enough lithium to produce the manufacture the batteries. So someone is saying that, hey, why don't we get lithium or other sort of like this material from space, from asteroid? So there are some planetary geologists working on ways of finding lithium from asteroids. But in my personal opinion, we could also think of other ways of producing batteries with maybe other materials that are not consuming. But yeah, so resources, yes, but I guess that Jeff can say that because he's a billionaire, and but if he wants to really and seriously invest in this, it's not an easy task.
And I would imagine he's probably also speaking from a longer term horizon.
Yeah.
But I'm just the moment I listened to this interview, I was imagining, this multiplanetary um, human race. Like there's like a base on the moon with all this kind of heavy industry in there, and then there's maybe Mars, or like I don't know. That's what
Well,
was I was imagining, like maybe I don't know, 40, 50 years ahead or whatever.
Well, we are almost at the same age now. I don't know if the audience is younger or older than us, but I don't know if you remember that it was a UK, a Brit production, Space 1999. You remember that? Maybe not. And so this is just so for the Googlers here, they can Google Space 1999. And the first idea was that, and this was, by the way, a TV series that started in the 70s. And the idea was that in 20 years from that, so by 1999, it was supposed to be a colony on the moon. And that colony was self-sustainable, was everything was there. um, but there was no idea of technical solution or what kind of challenges and other things you could have faced. So yes, we have all these cool ideas of colonizing moon, colonizing Mars, having human colonies and so on. um, but at a certain point when we ask Jeff, Richard, Elon, why you want to have a settlement on Mars, uh, because of human being is by definition and exploration is by definition in the DNA. We are explorers. Um, yeah, because they cannot say that because we want to mine, we want to find resources and send back to Earth, because technology is still not there. We want to go to Mars. Okay, so far with the technology and the know-how we have, it will take not less than 6 months to go there, and it's a one-way ticket so far, because to have a return ticket, we need to know how to get the fuel, because the 6 months is just with the fuel, with the propellant to go there to Mars. And we need to still understand how to get propellant there to come back. So try to imagine that if we still have those kind of problems, those kind of challenges, beautiful challenges, of course, but how we can consider on digging maybe holes there, finding resources, finding materials, and then being able to send those materials back after 6 months journey to Earth. So you know it's fascinating. It's raising the bar very high. The challenges are incredible, but keeping feet on Earth, it's good, but maybe Earth, we will not have the same timing or time frame to explore Mars to save our planet, because sooner or later, just see what happened with the ozone hole. Just see what's happening with the deforestation. Just see what's happened. It's the climate change and so on. So nature is going faster than technology development. So yeah, exploration is good. It's cool. It's sexy. Having a colony on Mars is good. But my personal question, this is something I'm just self asking myself, is that yes, we are going to Mars to do what? Holidays, or to get some resources? Or but if you get resources, how we can bring them back to Earth, and so on. So maybe I understand more. Even I could not afford, but I can understand more the space tourist who says that okay, I'm paying that amount of money to have that experience. I'm paying the ride. I'm going to the ISS and back. I'm going to the moon and back. I'm going to suborbital flights and so on. And maybe I can settle down for some days on a moon station because of fun, run some experiments, do something, and so on. But going to Mars is quite, you know, it's still challenging. It's still challenging going to the moon. I give you one number. We are all saying we are going back to the moon. Now, I'm not a complotist, so I'm not saying that we have not been to the moon. No, no, no. So we have been there. We still have flags, and we still have, evidence that we have been to the moon. But um, when we say we are going back to the moon, it's not completely true, because you know how much time the human being has been on the moon surface? Less than 1 day, 17 hours. So, uh, how you can say that now we are going to the moon to stay when you have spent only 17 hours on the moon surface? So is a complete new challenge. Is not just a shift of paradigm saying that I've been already there just for a visit and now I'm settling down. No, no, no. You have not settling down. Settling down is a completely new challenge. 17 hours doesn't give you, a complete picture of how he's living there, how he's building something there, how he's staying there. So this is a challenge. Imagine that there is this big program launched and started by NASA that is called Artemis. That is okay. By 2024, now the Artemis deadline are all postponed because of many reasons. But Artemis program is very ambitious. and we need to have ambition in space. So okay, but they are saying let's go to the moon, let's build something to stay on the moon, and then let's use the moon as a pit stop to go to Mars. Okay, but even going to the moon is the most challenging thing than even going to Mars, because to the moon we have been there, but we have not stayed there for so much time. So a lot of challenges. But my personal opinion, because this is the bias I have from the work I've done and what I'm doing so far, is all those challenges, all those bars are good, for space, are very good for all the movements, because all the technologies, all the innovation you can, all the milestones you reach, and all the things you can develop to reach those challenges definitely can be useful to solve, hopefully, some problem on Earth.
When you were speaking about this, it really kind of makes me come back to this metaphor of the wild wild west, but with the detail that this is probably thousands or millions of times more complex, right?
Yeah,
When back in the time, hey, let's go and let's domesticate the West, right? It was a Wild West. We have watched all these movies, right? And it probably
yeah,
took, I don't know, 30, 40, 50, 70 years to really get it to a place that is similar to the East, right?
yeah,
And it's probably kind of the same, right? Like now we're talking about the moon, Mars, and it's more like these first steps, but the West is still on land, right? It's still something we're kind of more aware of. Why if you go to moon or to Mars, it's like millions times maybe more complex. Who am I to
yeah,
estimate? But I can just try to imagine it, comprehend it this way.
yes,
But
yes,
again, that's how human evolution happens, right? By
yes.
having these
And
both moves. And
sure, sure. And taking your metaphor of wild west, you know how why it was called far west? Because it was going to the west, starting from east. So the Mayflower pilgrims, they landed on the east side, east coast of United States, and they started slowly going to the west, but and going to the very far west. But that was also a way to say that they were going where nowhere else has gone before. So they were like mostly Captain James T. Kirk, but they was going where nowhere has gone before, and it was something unexplored, something where you had to sustain on your own know-how and your own technologies at that time. So you were exploring to do what? To settle down and maybe to get some resources. So I think that the metaphor you mentioned about the wild west, and if you also consider the approach of the far west, is perfectly. We should copyright this, huh?
we should. The problem is I took it from somewhere listening to interviews, so
Okay,
definitely not mine. But if it's not
we should
copyrighted yet,
elaborate.
of course,
We should elaborate. We should elaborate. We
love
can
it.
maybe take out the concept of maybe outlaws in space, or a sheriff, or that kind of
There
the
you go,
ranch.
space sheriff. Who doesn't want to be a space sheriff? Love
Yeah,
it.
I'm
Anil, I just
I'm
want to
sorry I
actually give
don't
a
have my Texas hat here with me. Otherwise, I
just wanted to give a shout out to a couple of people that were actually on pod and being here with us. Evgeny, who actually won the pitch competition. He enjoyed listening, and of course Navid, who's right now in Zagreb. Great to see you, Navid.
hey,
Keep on
hi
tuning
all.
in, and he looks forward to catching up. Seems like. So there you go. Um, to wrap it up, we've been so much in space, and so let's go back to Earth, and let's
Yes.
kind of, if you can summarize, just what are the few very hot and practical areas that startups, entrepreneurs, innovative businesses can look into connected to space economy. Let's just summarize it and wrap up this episode.
Uh, okay, two things. First is we all say that data is the new oil. um, I always say that information is the new oil. So the information you can get out from data is the new oil. And space data now is very accessible, is very somehow uh, interesting, is accessible in most of the cases in an open and free way. So try to imagine what you can do with all this plenty of data, all this amount of data, space and non-space, what you can do with the computation power that you have in your hand, and what kind of innovations you can do, even not being a rocket scientist and not knowing maybe what that specific space data is used for or how it is generated. So data for me is definitely information, data, and so on is again is the new, maybe information is the new oil, but I would also say that information is the new black. huh? uh, Second thing is space is in need of competencies that were out of space, sorry for the joke, before. Space is in need of competencies in digital twinning. Space in need of competencies in, for instance, design, ergonomics, or in HMI, human-machine interface. Now there is a problem with, some of you have read about the Office of the Inspector General of NASA, who wrote a report on the problem and the delay of the space suit for new astronauts. There is no, expertise or competence on how to maybe wear the astronauts, but at the same time how to feed the new astronauts, the new the private astronauts, and so on. So all those competencies that were not focused by space agencies or so on, but they are now running at a very fast speed, and they need to be covered because the competition, as I said, is very, very fierce. And it's not like in the 60s where only 6 countries in the world were able to send a probe to space. Now space has been democratized, so we have 100 plus countries, and competition is there. So lot of competencies that are not part of the space domain that I'm pretty sure space would love to have. Just to give an example, try to have a look, or just see. I hope it is still there, but just try to have a look at the job openings and the open position at SpaceX. You will find, of course, a bunch of engineers and rocket scientists and so on. But then you will find also a lot of people that are not part of the space domain: physicians, psychologists, marketing, commerce, and so on. Maybe another time we also speak about the marketing and communication aspect of space, the IP, the intellectual property. There are no competencies on space law. There is no a framework for insurance on space, but now it's coming up, and there is no specific people from space who have been practicing insurance, but vice versa is there. A lot of people very acknowledge in insurance that can be somehow borrowed to space. So yeah, first is data and information. The second one is cross competencies from non-space to space.
And I'm just imagining the thousands of listeners that are leaving my podcast page and going to Elon, to SpaceX. So,
Yes,
but hey,
sending their
look,
CV, uploading. Hey, Anil told me that you're searching for.
look, man,
Okay,
he's your friend, he's my friend. So, hey, Elon, we're with
okay.
you. We're with you
Send
on that
me
one, brother.
send me the CVs. I'll grab the CV with a
You
beer
pass it on.
to
Yes,
him. I'll
yes,
pass
of
with
course.
him. Yes.
Very nice of you. So, final question, Neil. Thank you so much for this insightful discussion. Where could people get in touch with you, and how can you support startups, maybe large organizations on their journey? So, could you maybe give us a bit of a perspective? How
Uh,
can you support them? Where can they find you?
Okay, they can definitely find me on social. LinkedIn maybe is the right place. I'm not. Okay, maybe if you want, I can share my email address here. But I guess that LinkedIn is the perfect way of finding me. Yes, I am wearing two hats now. One is a consultancy company, a space economy advisory company. So we are working with public organizations, private companies, mentoring, coaching, and supporting also the scale up of some startups and spin-offs. And the other part is the fundraising and the finance. So yes, I guess that LinkedIn maybe is the right way to connect me. But please do write me something in the invitation, because normally I'm sorry saying that, but normally, if I don't know someone, I am always so if you write that, hey, I saw you on Stoyan's stage, so okay, I recall that this was the word, and then I can tell you, Stoyan, that hey, the podcast and the event worked well because I got that much number of invitations in LinkedIn mentioning you, so I can tell you if this was effective or not. But yes, please do
So
reach me,
people,
and
people go reach out,
yes,
ask for a request and put a little note where you found Anil
yes,
from. And by the way, those of you listening who are running a podcast or you're organizing a conference, I've witnessed Anil already now on the podcast, but also last week as a keynote speaker. He's an exceptional keynote speaker,
thank you
creating a
so
lot of
much.
value. So make sure to reach out and invite him as a speaker, as a consultant. You will not be sorry, and you'll definitely have an interesting conversation around
Hey,
space and beyond.
thank you so much, Stoyan. I owe you one, because you raised the bar so high. And if I get an invitation, definitely I need to mention that this was thank to you.
You owe me a one cup of coffee from one the little thing that you're
Okay,
doing it with.
I'll
So that's
invite you
that's
for the
that's for
beer
sure.
in my background, in my
Love
backyard
it.
with Jeff and so on. But remember two things, if I may conclude with this. One is that space is closer to us than we think. And the second thing, that every company or every activity can be a space company or a space activity. So don't give up.
I just wanted to leave a few seconds for it to really sink. So thank you so
Yes.
much, everybody, for being with us today, making it to the end of the podcast. I had a pleasure to be here with Anilkumar Dave, and this is episode 109, meaning there's 108 more episodes. So make sure to subscribe on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcast, or any other major podcast platform. If you enjoyed the episode, make sure to also share it with a friend that will get value out of it, and let us know what you think about it. Post a comment, connect on LinkedIn, and yeah, see you again on the next episode of Productivity Mastery. Ciao.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.